We're going to spend about 45 minutes together, and you are going to be busy, okay? So this is not just about me lecturing you. I'm going to give you 3 challenges tonight, okay? And I'm going to possibly push some of you out of your comfort zone because I'm going to ask you to work on 3 quick, powerful questions, and I'm going to ask you to pair up with somebody who you don't know. Why do you think I'm going to do that? What happened? What's that? It's a networking event. And what happens when we have, share things that are maybe new to us or we're a little bit shy about to people who we already know? We're a little bit withholding sometimes. So I want to really help you expand that. Tonight is all about helping pull back the curtains on a body of work that helped set me free. I call it the 3rd child I never expected to have. I wasn't quite sure what I was setting out to do. It was going to be some inspirational interviews. I had just relocated from New York City to Portland, and my husband and I were that couple who kind of threw a dart to Portland. We had really never been here before, but we were just in love, and we're West Coast kids who have been out in the Northeast for far too long. We were looking to get back to the West Coast, but we wanted to do things a little differently, and Portland seemed like a great place to start that journey. So I spent my 20s training and practicing psychotherapy in Boston and New York City. Really loved that work, loved really helping people and families put their lives together. But over time, I found I wasn't maybe cut out to do that work over time. Has anybody done clinical social work or counseling or mental health work? Incredibly amazing work and incredibly challenging work to do over time. So I started to think about what's next, and that was the beginning of a number of pretty substantial career pivots that I've done. And so this body of work was birthed when I moved from New York City and was trying to merge 10 years of psychotherapy with 3 years of business sales in Manhattan. I started to really miss the development work, but I really knew that I loved being in business. So the goal was to marry the two. But here I was relocated in Portland. I really didn't know anyone. I was newly pregnant, and I was feeling very alone. I was feeling pretty isolated and feeling like my well of wisdom was very dry. So I started to reach out to people, and I just started to observe people whom I felt were possibly pulling me into the future that I wasn't entirely sure what entailed. And so I just started asking people, different people, and you'll learn about some of them tonight, some simple questions. Like, how have you continued to navigate when you feel like you've maybe found yourself in moments like I am, at that moment, feeling alone, isolated, not totally sure, a little bit of a vision, but not really sure how to activate it. Has anyone ever felt like that? So the questions, produced these beautiful narratives and these stories, and I literally wrote them down with a pencil on a pad of paper when the babes were taking naps and between nursing. And long story short, one interview turned into another, turned into a blog, turned into a published book. So I'm very proud of it, and it seems to have resonated. And so thank you for voting, if you will, on the registration, because a lot of times I go and I talk about like the whole body of work, like the big 10 themes that came out of all of the interviews. What were the 10 consistent themes that came up throughout these people's lives? So in this book, there's people like my OBGYN, Dr. Hatfield from OHSU. I was spending a lot of time with her. I was laying down, she was doing her thing, and I was like, so, Dr. Hatfield, tell me about your journey. Being a female obstetrician, probably a pretty unique experience. There's people like my college roommate's dad, who's Joe Crawford. Are there any NBA fans? So Joe Crawford is from Philadelphia. He's probably the most celebrated NBA referee. He just retired about 2 or 3 years ago, but I got to interview him. My high school best friend is Cuban American, and she is now writing a show with Norman Lear, One Day at a Time, and it's based on her actual family life coming from Cuba to the US. So there's a lot of Gloria in here. So this is just like an array. It's not like your typical running, guys in tech, but there are some guys in tech here. Actually, Doug Fisher is an OSU alum, so there's a lot of his story in here. So because you all voted, what you asked to hear about tonight were 3 themes, and that's what we're going to dig into. You ready? Okay. So what I found in these interviews is that there's 3 themes that a lot of these amazing people who inspired me continued to self-inventory, continued to really have that curiosity, that courage and conviction to really look at and say, what is this theme, motivation? What does that mean for me today? And so that's what we're going to look at. I'm going to give you all an opportunity tonight to ask yourself, what is the topic of motivation? What matters to you today? What does risk-taking look like to you today? And what might a pivot look like? Okay? So let's dive in. Some of you may know Cindy. Cindy Tortorici was one of the first few marketing leaders at Nike back in the day. Cindy was one of those kind of godmothers who just like brought me under her wings when I moved to Portland. She could tell I was real clueless. And I had, coming from New York, I was wearing heels and the suits, and I was talking really fast, and I wanted to get to the answers. And she's like, okay, you got to slow down. You got to get those suits off. You got to get the heels off. Katie, you're in Portland, like if you haven't realized it yet. And so I opened the book with Cindy because of Cindy's experience being in Nike back in the day. She found it pretty isolating to be a female leader. Maybe that's not a theme that is so age-old today. But what she taught me was, I just love this beautiful quote. When we know ourselves, we stand a little taller. We become more confident. We are better able to collaborate, participate, step up, and volunteer our strengths, and admit when we don't know something. People are drawn to and follow that kind of leader. So what Cindy's teachings helped me understand was I needed to really tune in. For me to really figure out what my road forward was going to look like meant me tuning out all the external voices. Because it's amazing to get a lot of advice and a lot of input. But sometimes there comes a point where you really need to tune in. And so over time, as I started coaching people who were in my similar situation, I came up with this general framework. And so I encourage people to work on this. And it's 3 simple circles. And so the homework would be try and find out what are the consistent themes that are showing up inside all 3 circles. So I found that this would help people really tune inwards. And so for feedback, how many people have had 360 feedback at their company or have ever heard of 360 feedback? So I'm a big believer that sometimes if we can't figure out the answers ourselves, often the people around us who care about us are really able to show us how our behavior tells us what's clearly important to us. So it's a delicate exercise, and I wouldn't recommend you just emailing everyone on your diss list or asking. I mean, some people are as brave to do it on Facebook if that's your thing, but I would encourage you doing it in a little bit more of a private setting. But it's just those 3 simple questions. What should I stop, start, and continue doing? Now, you can apply this if it's something in your personal life that you're looking to work through, if it's something in your professional life. But what is the behavior and what are the actions that people who care about you, again, it could be family, it could be friends, it could be respected bosses or peers, that they're really observing? When you come home and you've had your worst days, what was going on that day? Who did you meet with? What happened? On the flip side, when you come home the most energized and most inspired. So start to just jot down the themes of the feedback that you're hearing from people. Secondly is the gut instincts. So I usually call it what gets me up at 2 in the morning, and what do I fundamentally know to be true about my journey at this moment in time? That's a really heavy way of saying, what's my truth? And sometimes during the day things get really busy and we've got a lot of chatter and everyone's on their phones, and so in the middle of the night, I find I have some of my most fundamentally true moments with myself. So start to just pay attention to that. Don't just wake up and push it away. Say, oh, it's a crazy dream. What was the message? So what I want you to do in the next 5 minutes, I want you to think about the opportunity piece. So this one is a little bit abstract, but stay with me. I found that oftentimes we notice that we can be sometimes even jealous or just really like alert or really curious about certain people or certain things or certain happenings in the world. And sometimes we'll think like, oh, well, why am I jealous? Or what is this like eliciting for me? But actually, instead of putting it in like this negative, like uncomfortable bucket, that's actually like a telling bit of information for you to dive into. Because I believe that's what's really pulling us into our future. It's kind of an intuitive way of telling us what really is inspiring and what matters to us now. So I want you to spend a couple minutes just thinking about perhaps this intimate question, but what are some key relationships, some networks beside OSU DN? I mean, of course. What are some meetings, events, people, anything that might help you expand and experience more mature and dynamic work scenarios? So spend some time thinking. We're gonna get the music back on, and then I'm gonna ask you to stand up and go find something that you don't know and share. Just a couple minute share about what you feel you're being kind of pulled towards. That's something pretty new for you. Okay? Okay. Okay, everyone, who can tell me about their amazing sharing experience? And keep in mind, this is around the theme of curiosity, so thank you for being curious. What are some of the opportunities you guys talked about that might pull you into your future? I know this is vulnerable, perhaps, but you can speak to the generalities. Come on, Annie, speak to me. Dígame.
He's doing something really bold.
Okay.
He targets people that he admires.
Okay.
And he actually reaches out to them.
Yes. Okay. Okay, awesome. Reaches out to inspiring. Excellent, thank you. Who else? Remington.
Yes.
What about you? What'd you learn?
I did more of the talking.
Good. What'd you say?
So I've been with Next Adventure for 5 years, and I'm looking for more of a pivot.
Yep.
And something that I've identified is expanding more of my network.
Awesome.
To expand my opportunities.
How are you going to do that? You're here.
I am here.
All right.
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Jamie, what about you?
Such the wrong person to ask this right now.
I could tell that about you. All right, keep it simple. Okay, Emily, we'll help you out, Jamie. I hear you. I know.
We cheated
Okay.
because we know each other.
Oh, yes, I can see why.
Yeah, but we also have a history and we know these stories, and so it's good to
Okay.
have somebody that you feel safe with.
Okay, good.
But I think just understanding what your opportunities are, or to understand what you really actually want. And
Yeah.
I think that that's where some of the struggle is
Yep.
to really think about what you want your career to
Yep.
be, not necessarily like the way it's progressed naturally.
Totally. And
Yeah.
so I was one of those people, and I talked to a lot of those people, and they don't really know. And so that's kind of why this is a model. So I'm teeing up for you like exercises that go deeper in the book, but this is kind of an intuitive, and I'm not like that intuitive woo-woo, but this I've been told is like pretty woo-woo. Oftentimes it's really hard to identify what we want because sometimes we think like company or region or, specialty. And that's where people get blocked, because they have all the connotations of like all that's attached to that. And so this is a way to try and get the essence of the work you really want to be doing, the people you want to be around, the output of what you want to be a part of, the mission, you know what I mean? So that's why. So thank you, that's a great learning. Yes.
We were talking about We were talking about finding mentors that challenge you.
Yes.
So somebody that's not necessarily maybe in the field that you want to go into,
Yep.
but somebody that that you see or that you admire, but something that, I don't know, they could add value, and maybe you go in a different direction where you thought your career would never go.
Yes.
Right. So find somebody that's almost like out of your comfort
Yep.
zone, completely out, like in the
Totally.
ballpark. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so we know all about closed networks and open networks. The beauty of diversity is the diversity of thought and diversity of backgrounds and points of view. And when we have organizations or networks or groups that don't have diversity, it becomes an echo chamber. There's a lack of innovation and a lack of thought and a lack of action. So thank you for saying that, because that's definitely something I think, there's something to be said for. We tend to be drawn to people who we share values with, have similarities, have a common foundation. But I think the beauty is when we really pair up with people who there's some mutual overlap, but also like some really like clear differences that help spar one another's thoughts in a different way. That's awesome. Anybody else? You're way too quiet. I'm coming for you. Coming for you. Lois.
I can't remember your question, actually.
Oh, well, what did you talk about in that little break?
We talked about mature and dynamic work scenarios
Yeah.
and kind of what that means.
Yeah.
And I just love the word mature and
Oh, okay.
dynamic together in the same.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, just nice. Okay. Yes.
We were talking about people that we're jealous of and why we're jealous of.
Yes.
And the first person that came to mind was this girl that I went to high school with, where she
They're the
has
worst.
this beautiful Instagram, and it's like the
Curated,
aesthetic goals.
yes.
And I was asked, why am I jealous of her? It's just because those beautiful pictures. But she's able to live a life that looks so carefree and does what she wants. But she's
Yes.
able to make a living off that as a photographer freelancing.
Yep.
And I'm a photographer, but I don't do it as a freelancing job. I just do it kind of for fun. And this is the second time within 2 weeks I've been told that I should freelance and go ahead and
Awesome.
do it.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we get triggered in positive ways too. Trigger can be something of a negative, but it's also a positive. It's like, I want that. Like, that's amazing. You look like, and whether it's true or not, we don't really know, but the imagery of it and the vision and the dream of it for her and then for you is what's pulling you into the future. So this is a model for people who feel really stuck. And that's why you're breaking out of your fog. So there we go. All right, we'll move on because that was a chunk of time. Sherry Sambursky, I think, is still down in Los Angeles, but she was a former, I think, healthcare practitioner turned career coach, and just super lovely. And she told me, signs from the universe are all around you. They may come in the form of the promotion you were hoping for that didn't come through, doors being closed to opportunity to advance in your current job. The key is to recognize the signs, the nudges, and act on them. And so there's a lot of stories like this where people who are really hard charging and were just absolutely so burned out, so fried, and just so, in denial, if you will, that the truth was right there. But we see what we want to see. And so, yes, oh my God, she said that. Yes. So, I think it's really, it's all this tuning in is really looking at when the doors close that maybe that's actually a gift. But in that moment in time, it can be really painful. Okay, so moving on to the second theme that you all asked to talk about was risk-taking. So when I was coaching people, I was coaching a lot of people who were running businesses like I was at that time. And I found that there was definitely a strong mentality piece and mindset piece to being a successful entrepreneur versus those who were more holding back and just feeling like that wasn't something for them. And then I started to consult and coach in organizations. And I found that organizations today really want that entrepreneurial attitude in their people. How to do more with less, how to inspire people in creative ways, how to just stay ahead of this very turbulent marketplace we're in. So I had the opportunity to meet Ariana's sister. I brought her to a Women of Nike event a few years back. And I love this quote from Ariana because this shows it's live life as if everything is rigged in your favor. And if you talk to entrepreneurs, if you're one yourself, this is probably your mantra. I mean, you just assume the house is going to go your way. And so it showed to me in my sad moment of feeling like, what is the way forward, that the mindset piece was going to be something I really needed to get in good order to move forward. And so as I started to think more and talk more to people about those who were able to take stronger risks, bigger risks, more frequent risks, and of course, like, well, for the most part, responsible risks. Sometimes people say, what are you encouraging here, Katie? Like, come on. But that there was really some strong family patterns from the ways we were raised that were impacting our ability to shift into that mindset. So some questions for you to think about. We're not going to do the exercise on this, but just some curiosity of thought is, did your family of origin take any major risks in your early life? Did you, and how did it turn out? Because we get really attached to those outcomes at an early life. So if it was a caretaker who went big on a risk and it really, had a crippling effect for them and possibly for you, that's going to be something very challenging for you to override. Those type of people are typically those who work towards careers and lives that are built on security and predictability. So number two, when you think about the risk you have not taken, how do you feel? So risk, there's a lot of components of shame that come up for a lot of people. And so sometimes just coming to terms with the reality that we need to take a lot of risks to have a lot of risks go in our favor. There's going to be wins and losses, but a lot of people can get stuck when one or two risk-taking opportunities don't pan out for them, and that will really keep them in kind of arrested development. Some things to also think about are, what are some great outcomes that might come from taking the greater risk? So, shifting the mentality to the investment and the negative impact that may come if things don't work out, versus really having some meditations and focus on the upside and staying in that positive mind frame. And then finally, do you mind people underestimating you? In a lot of the interviews, when a lot of these really incredible people made pretty substantial pivots, and we'll talk next about what I mean by pivots. It doesn't just mean like quitting your day job and starting a company like tonight. Pivots look very different for all of us in different ways. This is really about moving out of that place where you feel there's inaction and kind of a stalled out place. And so the book is really about getting you moving. And it doesn't always have to be a linear line. It's really just about getting you out of your stuck place onto that road of curiosity. So Claire is now a CFO out in Philadelphia. And what she taught me is that she's gained confidence and built momentum by putting herself at risk in situations where she is vulnerable and at risk of failure. You can't get anywhere without putting yourself in new situations. And 9 times out of 10, nobody objects. So how many of you have in your mind some places, some meetings, some groups that you'd really like to have a seat at the table with, but you would never or haven't yet asked if you could join the group or the meeting? That happens for me a lot, and it happens for a lot of people I know a lot. And so what I loved about Claire, because she was just like, well, yeah, I made it happen. I wasn't just, continually brought along the career track of becoming a CFO. This is how I got there. And so we turned her teachings to me into this game, which is next. So I want you to spend a couple minutes just kind of getting into your quiet space and thinking about 3 things. Where can you learn something that's going to contribute to your career evolution? Learn. Number 2, where can you share something that will benefit other people's career? Give back, expand, make it less about you, more about giving first, getting second. And then 3rd, where can you make your voice heard? There's a lot of people out there with amazing points of view, and maybe not totally solidified point of view, but they have a great perspective. but they struggle with having their voice heard. So maybe they have a strong voice, they have confidence, but the context that they want to be heard in, you know, they haven't quite figured out how to show up in that way. And then there's lots of variations on that theme. So if you don't mind thinking about one of those 3 areas, and then get up, go find someone who you don't work with, and share, please. Thank you. All right, who feels courageous to share? I want to hear from 3 people who I haven't heard from before. Please. Come on, people.
Okay.
Come on. Oh, yes.
Well, coming from like a student perspective, because I am still a student, I feel like these events that like we have, you know, through Oregon State or whatever, are really helpful to especially talk to alumni and really understand like what, you know, the industry or whatever industry you're going in is all about. As well as just like in my case, my instructors and professors have been really helpful in those terms as well. So
Awesome. So what I heard from you is just really being open to learning. And I think that's a lot of what I espouse and what's worked for me, but I still am challenged with sometimes, is just not putting all the pressure, you know, to figure it out yourself. Like, we're all here sharing this journey of life, and we all struggle with these themes at one moment in time. We're not alone with this. And some of us are much more invested, you know, have a lot more pride, and some have shame, and sometimes it's baggage, and sometimes it's real stuff today. But I guess my overall theme is just really encouraging you to be gentle with yourself and to just be curious and just really explore this. And sometimes you'll figure out some answers that really enrich your life, you know, outside of work. Sometimes you figure out parts about yourself that has nothing to do with the way you make a living. And you realize, like, you absolutely love, you know, sculpting clay. I don't know. And so just be open to it, and don't worry about having everything fall into a box. From a recovering control person. Who else? Anyone else? Just one more. Yes, thank you.
So I have a group of around 10 women that we've been in a book group.
Awesome.
And this is not like a wine
Yeah.
night. I mean, this is really like a book group where we are really there for each other. And these are women who, like, we can bare our soul to.
Yeah.
And what I've enjoyed is putting myself out there and getting a read off of them, and them sharing with me and saying, you know, you need to throw an elbow on that one.
I love that.
Like, don't do that anymore.
Yes.
And these are relationships that have taken years to build and grow. And so anyway, I don't know what I would do without them.
I love that. Thank you. I was joking. I used to be a sales rep in Manhattan, so I had the unique experience of driving a car in New York City, which is like, there's a very small amount of people who do that. Anyways, and so I would listen to the radio, and there's this fabulous radio host, and I can never remember her name, but she said, oh, Wendy Williams. She's still out there, like, big in media. She's fabulous. And her tagline was that straight talk makes for straight understanding. And I just cannot quit that quote, because you know, it gets really complicated, like, speaking the truth. And like, my observation about you is the truth that I have in this moment in time. You may totally disagree. You know, I just have my point of view, and I'm telling you what I see. And so I love that you have this group to have really that straight talk, because sometimes when you don't have that, it makes it really hard. And sometimes we're not in a place where we want straight talk. We want soft talk. And you tell your people in your life that you need, you know what you need, and they'll give it to you. Okay, we're gonna move on, but that was the courage piece, okay? Okay, thank you for being so patient. They gave me a little more time, so I'm gonna just knock it out of the park with the last one, and then I'll set you free. So, pivots. So, as you can see by the poster, sometimes people just have in their mind pivots as like this dramatic, like, in-house job to like full-blown like Elon Musk, like, oh my God, there's no, you know, gradient in between. But there really is. And the journey from one to a small business owner or a large business owner is often a very long journey. and a long pursuit of curiosity, courage, and conviction. If anyone's looking for a fabulous career coach, Bruce Hazen is one of my dear mentors. He has an office in Northeast Portland. He's working on his second or third book. I can't keep up. But his business is, I just love the simple theme. It's called 3 Questions Consulting. And so he was so kind to let me use some of his kind of core work in this book. But, oftentimes these 3 questions can really help us figure out that dullness that we're feeling, that kind of gray haze, like I don't know what it is, but it's not this, but I'm not really sure what it is. So number 1, is it time to move up in work that you want to sustain? And you've got to be flexible and think creatively about what that means. That doesn't mean you're going to hike the ladder of your current organization, or it might, but it means you want to elevate the role that you have in your particular area over time. So that's where you begin your journey of investigating what that looks like. So meaning you love what you do and you want to go deeper. Number 2, is it time to move out of your current role as your work or your organization or your boss is no longer a fit with who you are becoming, right? So the story of the butterfly. We are constantly evolving. What matters to us, what's invigorating to us, inspiring to us today, may stay the same for some of us years from now. That's just not been the case for me. And so I find, and there's a lot of people who they just are going to work every day and something's just not quite right. And for them, the aha is that it's just not fitting with me. Whether it's the boss, the company, the role, it's time to begin to plot the road ahead. And so it's time to move out. And then number 3 is one where it's really hard to figure this one out, but sometimes it actually is the case, is that I'm getting in my own way. I'm actually in a pretty amazing place where I'm learning. It's not always pretty. People don't always get along. Politics aren't always, not present. But I'm actually the one that I could be coachable. I could learn to stretch myself and adapt, because the place I'm at right now has got more going for me than probably a lot of other places. And so I'm committed to shifting the way I have difficult conversations with my boss, or I'm going to shift the way I show up every day to really demanding, challenging situations. I'm going to find a way. Maybe I'm going to spearhead change in my organization. I don't know. So I'm just sharing with you some of my own experiences, some of the voices of people I work with and have tried to help, is that I'm actually the one who needs to get out of my own way. So here's Joe, the NBA ref. He's so cute. All right, when April rolls around, Katie, my referee crew and I have worked hard during some 75 games and are headed into playoffs feeling totally exhausted. I can see the looks of the young refs thinking, what's Joe going to talk about now? I'm really driven to get everyone around me to perform, and that isn't always what everyone wants you to be doing. That's where I really serve. So for Joe, he was at year 36 of being his NBA ref, and his body was absolutely falling down. I mean, he was just absolutely trounced. But when I did this interview with him, he was just having that revelation that despite the fact it was probably time to hang it up, he really wanted to, I guess to move up. He wanted to serve in that leadership way. He didn't want to leave, and he felt like he had more to give, and he wanted to kind of serve in a leadership tone. So I loved that about Joe. As we look to wrap up tonight, Carmen Volokay is also Portland-based, amazing consultant, but she's always on the road and not here very much. But she is one of my big mentors, and she really helped me understand that in order to dive deep and really look for our deeper calling today, it's really about being unconventional. So it's about if we want to fulfill our highest potential, which sounds super lofty. I'm not saying that's the only way to live. It's just kind of the direction I guess we all should want to go, but there's a lot of pivots along the way. but you are going to have to push boundaries. You're going to have to challenge the notions of acceptable behavior, make mistakes, and redefine the very notion of success as we know it. So I love this quote and this teaching because I found myself and through friends of mine and mentors and peers that those who continue to pursue and pivot and work through obstacles, whether they were students or leaders or CEOs or entrepreneurs, they were able to really work through the difficult times. And a lot of times there's some stuff that's really more internal that can be holding us back. That's the stuff we can best control. There's always going to be stuff going on in the world. Gosh, we see that every day. We just can't control. So my encouragement to you is really to try to harness and get focused on what you can control. So my last challenge for you tonight is to spend a couple minutes thinking about what is the first step you're ready to take tonight or tomorrow, I know it's late, to push past your binding rules, your limiting conventions, or heavy expectations that are keeping you from moving into your next act. I know that sounds like gobbledygook, but does that make sense to you? Okay, if you want further clarification, let me know. But all is to say is that we often tend to be heavy caretakers and have a lot of expectations about what we can and can't do because of social norms from growing up. And so I want to invite you to think about letting some of that go and really staying true to yourself. So I will give you 5 minutes to share. Thank you. All right, people, let's get to the conviction, please. I'm not going to be proud of you if you go home and don't put any of this to action. So, what are some of the first steps you heard about or feel comfortable sharing with us tonight? You cannot leave till we get some on paper. Yes.
Well, Susan over here shared with me something that I loved, and she said, what other people think of you is none of your business.
That's right.
And I really resonated with that, yeah.
I love that. Thank you. One of my friends said to me, once you turn 40, there's about 5 people you really care what they think about you. You know, I believe that. Who else? Who else? What are some first steps? I'm just looking at the reflection. Karen, what are you going to do?
Well, I am still a student, but I said that I would be looking kind of job searching.
Okay.
And then just kind of maybe thinking of if I want to do any freelancing and just kind of learn of positions that are out there that I didn't know about before.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that. I love that it's a 2-pronged approach. Gives you more options. What else? One more. Rule of 3. Yes.
I'll speak now.
Thank you.
I thought you said I'll speak loud. I was going to say, okay, you're on it.
I said now.
Oh, I love this, Jamie. Thank you.
For me, the third one up there
Yeah.
that you had on the slide made a lot of sense, just around showing up differently
Yep.
than I had before. So earlier when you called me out, I was like, I don't know what to say because I stepped into a new role.
Yeah.
4 months later, I had a child.
Yeah.
Then I was out for 5 months on maternity leave, and
Yeah.
now I'm back for 3. So I was like, I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
But I think I'm in a new role, and
Yeah.
I think it's about embracing that change and taking out of it what I can to enhance my own marketability
Yeah.
and leadership.
Awesome, Jamie. Wow, thank you so much. It's incredible. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up because there is one big bow that all of this falls into. So these are my 2 little girls who were being brought into the world and were part of my life when I wrote this. I mean, they're still part of my life, but they were but I love these pictures because it's like the head and the heart to me. And it's really ultimately about finding our true calling, leading with confidence, building your good fortune, is aligning what you know to be true in your mind to what your heart longs to achieve. So that is my wish for all of you. I don't really push my book, but people have asked. It's on Audible, Kindle, Amazon, and thank you so much. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you, OSU DN. Thank you.